Let's talk about handstand holds, how we can start getting comfortable being inverted, being up against the wall, and ultimately making our way toward being able to start practicing our handstand walks. Okay, so first things first, before I ever think about trying to get inverted, the first thing I need to do is make sure I have the requisite shoulder strength so that I can support myself overhead. Last thing we want to do before we try to go inverted is try to go inverted before we're sure our shoulders are strong enough, our mechanics are sound enough that we can safely hold ourselves in inverted position. Okay, so a couple of ways we can progress into that. So you guys know that some of our go-to kind of handstand push-up progressions are a pike push-up on the ground, our pike push-up from the box. So these are a couple of things I can do. Holds in these positions are a couple of things I can do to start making sure I've got the shoulder strength I need. So I can head down to my pike push-up position on the ground and just hold in this position for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, whatever's kind of a challenging amount of time to make sure you're building that shoulder strength, working your way up to having that requisite shoulder strength. From there, I can do the same thing, but I can do it from a box, which is going to be a little bit more challenging, obviously, because I'm going to be able to get my hips much more on top of my shoulders, a lot more kind of akin to what it's going to look like when I'm ultimately up against the wall. Once I do that for a little bit and I'm pretty sure I'm progressing, then what I can do is go ahead and make my way to the wall. And there's a couple things I can do here. So first of all, you guys might remember from the first open workout we had this year, we had wall walks. So if I'm not quite comfortable yet thinking about trying to go get inverted up against the wall with my back to the wall, I can reverse it and do wall walks. So what I can do is, again, just like in that open workout, I'll start here, walk my feet up the wall, and I can just hold it however high is appropriate for me, however high I feel comfortable with. Okay, so just like on the box, I'm doing kind of a pike on a box, but instead my feet are up against the wall, and I'll hold it here for, again, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, whatever that feels challenging, making sure that you're building that shoulder strength that we want to see before we go up against the wall in an inverted position. So from there, what I can do is go ahead and walk my feet all the way up against the wall. Face will be facing the wall, and I can hold in that position. Now let's talk about shoulder position, hand position when I'm up against the wall. So just like with my push-ups, we don't ever want to see people doing push-ups like this, okay? We don't ever want to see people with their elbows flaring out. When I'm doing presses overhead, we don't want to see our elbows flaring out. I always want to have my hands on the ground, making check marks with my thumbs, making my thumbs point to the opposite corners of the room. Whatever you need to think about to be sure that when you're overhead, we're in this position, okay? So when I go overhead, first thing I got to be sure of is my arms are locked out. If I try to kick up against the wall and my arms are even slightly bent, as soon as I get the majority of my weight over the top of my shoulders, over the top of my elbows, I'm going to come crashing down. That's not what we want. So we want to be sure that before we try to kick up against the wall, our arms are locked out. From here, what I'll do is place my hands on the ground a foot or so from the wall, okay? And before I try to kick up to the wall all at once, what I'll do is we'll do some donkey kicks, we can call them. So I'll just place my hands down to the ground in this position, kind of a staggered stance position. Again, thumbs making check marks, my hands about shoulder width apart, maybe just slightly outside of that. And I can just start doing little donkey kicks. And I can get higher and higher as I get comfortable. And ultimately, I'll find myself all the way up against the wall. Again, arms locked out, pretending like I had a barbell over my head. If I was standing doing strict presses and I had a barbell over my head, I don't want to be here. This is not a completed rep. It's not safe. I want to be here, right? Same thing when I'm up against the wall, okay? From there, if we get pretty comfortable, I can hold 30 seconds. I can hold 40 seconds upside down, my legs together, my toes pointed, my rib cage down, nice neutral spine. If I get there, then we can start talking about, okay, now I want to get comfortable, maybe thinking about doing some handstand holds, some handstand walking, all right? So handstand holds, very simple way. So we just finished, we were up against the wall. Next thing I can do is just practice bringing my feet away from the wall. Okay, just using that wall as a guide to help me get comfortable developing the balance and the core strength to be off the wall in space, okay? From there, once I get pretty good at that, we can start working on actually walking. Now, a couple of ways we can go about this. We can do what we call around the worlds. So I'll go back to my box, come up in that position, and then walk my way around the box. It's a good way to make sure I understand the shoulder kind of mobility, stability I need to be able to do the actual handstand walking. Another thing we can do, similar to being up against the wall, I can stretch a band in between a couple of J-cups and kick up against the band and hold in that position. Now the band is a lot less forgiving than the wall is, so that's a lot more challenging. But that's something we could progress to once we get pretty good at holding our feet away from the wall for several seconds at a time. From there, we get pretty good at all this stuff. We just need to go out into the middle of the gym and start practicing that moving forward with our hands. Remember, my hands are always going to be splayed out, grabbing the ground with my fingers. But before we ever get into thinking about trying to walk in the gym, I always want to be sure. Remember, strict before kipping, basics before complicated stuff, okay? I want to master the basics. So let's make sure we're mastering holding ourselves up against the wall. Let's make sure we're mastering holding ourselves in space with our feet away from the wall. Once we get good at that stuff, then we can move on to talking about walking on our hands in the middle of the gym.